Welcome back to Opening Statements. This morning, we're shining our spotlight on the University of Kentucky cheerleader Laken Snelling, who's accused in a case involving her deceased baby. So the 21-year-old is out of jail after her arrest over the weekend. Authorities say that her deceased infant was found inside of a closet at Snelling's home. They say the infant was found wrapped in a towel and placed inside of a black trash bag. She is facing charges of abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, and concealing the birth of an infant. This is what we believe to be Laken Snelling's latest TikTok post. Among her goals, a family emoji and a mom nursing a baby emoji. Okay. Now, Snelling was in court on Tuesday, where she pleaded not guilty, posted a $100,000 bond, and is now on home confinement. Her next court date is September 26. Now, I want to be very clear. She's not facing murder charges. Okay? It seems that investigators are going to try to determine the baby's cause of death and then proceed accordingly. So it's unclear how the baby died at this point. So that is the reason that you're not hearing murder as one of the charges, and we don't even know if it's applicable. So I want to be very clear about that. Let's bring in our expert guest and talk a bit about this death investigation, what it may yield and how long it may take. I want to welcome in board-certified forensic pathologist Dr. Priya Banerjee and forensic death investigator and professor at Jacksonville State University, Joseph Scott Morgan. Good morning to you both. Professor Joe, starting with you, please. Police say the Fayette County Coroner's Office are the ones who are investigating this infant's cause of death. How long would you expect this to take?
I would imagine that the pathologist that's leading this case for the coroner is not going to take an incredibly long time in order to come back with a cause of death. And that's very important here because, as you mentioned off the top, there are no homicide charges at this point, okay? What's going to be very important is the testing that they're going to do in the lab. I'd keep a very close eye on any information that's coming out of the coroner because that is going to be the tail of the tape.
Yes, let's talk about that. Dr. Priya Banerjee, tell us a little bit about what you expect the forensic pathologist to be looking for at autopsy.
So these are incredibly complex cases. I've handled not quite a few, but a few in my career, and I'm glad they're limited to that. What's going on is that you have to prove, which is incredibly difficult, whether the baby was born alive or not, to then, if it was alive, to then bring murder charges. So that's a big if. It is very difficult just from there can be so many variables as to why even a full-born or full-term baby can be born, stillborn, and even an autopsy doesn't always find the cause. And so if it's nebulous like that, they may not be able to prove the murder charges. I also don't know the condition of the body of the baby, and plastic is not breathable. And so that can promote decomposition very quickly, sort of, help the tissue disintegrate more, get what's called macerated. And so that can also limit how accurate any autopsy findings are. And I just want to highlight that there have been a lot of, convictions overturned and sort of disparities, if you will, with the float test. There was a test that's shown to be erroneous where lungs float in water at autopsy, and that's been used to quote unquote prove homicides in the past, but that can be false positive with decomposition. There's a lot of it's a test fraught with problems, so that's not thought to be reliable anymore. So you really have a lot of investigation and studies to do to even try to prove whether the baby was born alive.
Definitely. Thank you for all that, Dr. Priya. Professor Joe, back to you, please. Something I learned from the late, great Dr. Cyril Wecht is correlation, how we take what we know at autopsy and we marry it to the facts that we're gathering, from police, from investigators doing the interviewing. Professor, tell me, what are some of the questions you have that you think would be important in helping us gather the full story of what exactly happened to this little baby?
I think probably the histrionics of the pregnancy. I'd like to know, had she received any kind of prenatal care at all? I'd like to know something about her mental health. That could go to intentionality. It could go to any kind of psychopathology that's involved in this where she cannot exercise due care. But to the doctor's point just a second ago, right she is about how that bag that the baby's found kind of swaddled in towels, I think, and other cloth, and then placed into a bag. She's right about the decomposition. It's promoted by plastic. Here's the other thing, though, and I go back to this idea of charges pending or potential charges. That bag is non-porous. If, in fact, this child was, in fact, and it can be proven, was born alive, and you place a living child inside of a bag, what do they always tell us, even with our newborns? You know, you can't have bags in the cradle. You can't have them. Don't allow kids to play with this. Dry cleaning bags, garbage bags. Now you're talking about placing an infant into a plastic bag. So that's why this is so very essential. I think that Dr. Weck would look at that and see if there's any corollary between that. God rest his soul, by the way.
Oh, I love that. I know how much you admired him as well, Professor.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about the delivery. Does the delivery tell us anything, Dr. Priya? I think some of us wondering if she's willing to talk about what exactly happened. Can that be clues for you as a forensic pathologist?
Oh, yes. So, you know, the more investigation, the more information, the better. Okay. And so any of these we ask, like, I think the police investigation is going to be huge. Who's the baby's father? Did the friends or family have any indication that she was pregnant? In her courtroom stance in that red dress, she looks rather thin in profile. You know, she doesn't have that postpartum belly where, you know, it takes months for the uterus to shrink back down. She doesn't look heavy. I mean, you know, so I definitely had weight to lose from my pregnancy. And so I just want to see if it was even obvious to people around her. She was an athlete. You know, was she able to participate? And then, you know, where was this baby delivered? Where was the crime scene, if you will? You know, where are these towels from? Was it her house? Was anybody home? And did anybody hear the baby cry? That is a single, probably to me, one of the most important factors if that can be determined.
Yeah, all really helpful pieces of information, things to look for as this investigation continues.